Okay, let's get into the meditation straight away. So please sit down, relax, and just get quiet and we'll see what happens. So. Okay, so just start off as always just by being comfortable and just allowing yourself to be. One of the fastest way to get peaceful, especially if you come from a long day or whatever it is just to allow yourself to be whatever you are. And just stand back, allow things to become peaceful. And there's nothing much you have to do really, at least initially. And just to have an object of awareness at the beginning, so you don't kind of float too far away. It's always good to keep the awareness on the body, and it gives you some feedback on whether you are relaxing or not. So keep that awareness on the body. But apart from that, just allow things to be. Allow the world to fade into the background, and allow the present moment to arise in its place. And if you can, just feel the power and the beauty of the simplicity of mind as things fade away and things become peaceful. Just see how nice and beautiful that is. It is far superior to all the activity of life, far more content and delightful than anything else you experience. And the deeper you take this, the greater will be that delight. And to help you let go of the world outside, just remind yourself very gently that the world outside will never give you any real satisfaction and meaning. The real satisfaction and meaning is found in the spiritual life, and in particular in meditation practice. So let go of all the meaningless things of the world, all the things that at least for now are completely irrelevant, and come back to this wonderful spiritual path instead. And if you are able, try to focus on that sense of peace that is present right here, that positive atmosphere. There's so many people doing something beautiful together. If you can take that up and bring it into your meditation, just that feeling of peace is enough to make you peaceful, and then take it forward. And what a wonderful thing it is to have this spiritual community right here in the heart of Perth, and always bring up that positive perception of having so many like-minded people to support you in your practice. So just please finish off the meditation, if you like, by wishing everyone here well. May every one of you, may you be happy and well.